Something feels off with the Chinese economy right now. And it's not some abstract thing you only see in charts. You can see it on the ground, in these huge job fairs packed with people but with hardly any jobs, or in these vast empty districts of half-finished apartment buildings. Okay, let's really get into this, because the numbers, they tell a wild story.
Just take a look at youth unemployment. In just a couple of years, the jobless rate for young people, we're talking 16 to 24-year-olds, it doubled, shooting past 20%. It got so bad, so embarrassing, that the government they just stopped releasing the data altogether. But it's not just the job market that's hurting.
You can see that pain reflected in the financial markets, too. I mean, sure, global markets have been a bit of a roller coaster, but China's stock market has absolutely cratered. It's lost 40% of its value since 2021. And at the same time, spending is down, prices are falling. Things are so slow that developers are literally offering gold bars to anyone who will buy an empty apartment.
But maybe the most fundamental shift, the one that changes the entire game, is this. For the first time in any of our lifetimes, China's massive population is actually getting smaller. Now, that's not just another statistic. This is a seismic event that reshapes everything we thought we knew about the country's future.
So you put all this together and it leads to a question that honestly would have sounded completely absurd just a few years ago. The conversation is no longer about when China's economy will overtake America's, but if it ever will. So are we actually witnessing peak China?
Now hold on. Before we jump to any conclusions, we have to remember something really, really important. For decades, betting against the Chinese economy has been a fool's errand. Time and time again, it has completely defied expectations and proven all the doomsayers wrong.
I mean, just think back. During the 2008 financial crisis, when the world's biggest economies were in a nosedive, China's was still growing by double digits. It was the first one to bounce back. Fast forward a decade, and it's ground zero for the COVID pandemic. But once again, it's the first major country to get back on its feet, with its exports hitting all-time highs.
So what's the secret sauce here? How does China keep pulling off these economic miracles? Well, the playbook is surprisingly straightforward. When it gets backed into a corner, its answer has always been the same: build. We're talking roads, bridges, skyscrapers, airports, whatever it takes. And here's how it works. Step 1. Beijing makes it almost ridiculously easy to borrow money. Step 2. It just pumps a ton of that cash into state-owned companies. And when money's that cheap, what's the incentive? Just build, build, build. It creates jobs, it juices the GDP numbers, and it's been their go-to fix for every problem under the sun.
And for the longest time, the rest of the world kind of just laughed at this strategy. Back in 2017, CNN did a story mocking this brand new, futuristic metro station that was built, seemingly, in the middle of a field. It looked like the perfect example of absurd, wasteful spending.
But just 2 years later, that same station to nowhere was at the heart of a brand new, bustling urban hub. And this is the pattern we saw over and over again. The world would point at a ghost city or some bizarre project, and then, sure enough, millions of people would move in and demand would catch up to supply. That build first, ask questions later strategy? For a long time, it actually worked. But here's the thing about a magic trick. It can't go on forever. And today, China is finding out that its one and only playbook is starting to fail. Why? Because it's literally running out of road.
And here's how we know the engine is breaking down. 20 years ago, it took about $4 of investment to get $1 of economic growth. Pretty efficient. Today, it takes $12 to get that same $1 of growth. The whole model is becoming incredibly wasteful.
And the reason why is actually pretty simple. China is a victim of its own success. It's a middle-income country that already has rich country infrastructure. We're talking 25,000 miles of high-speed rail, 3 million miles of highway. All the big, impactful, necessary projects, they're already done. It's running out of useful things to build.
So when you run out of obvious projects, you start resorting to things that are, well, a bit more questionable. Take this for example. This is the tallest bridge in the world. It's an absolute marvel of engineering. But this $150 million project isn't connecting Shanghai to Beijing. It's in Guizhou, the fourth poorest province in the entire country. It feels like a solution that's desperately searching for a problem.
Now, look, taking on debt to build things isn't bad on its own. Every country does it. But the real smoking gun, the thing that tells you there's a serious problem, is when debt starts growing way faster than the economy itself. For years, those two lines grew together. But right around 2009, they split apart. China kept borrowing and building, but the economic growth just stopped keeping up.
And this is the corner China has backed itself into. The old model, the only one they've ever really known, is broken. Investment just can't drive growth like it used to. And with the rest of the world trying to buy less from China, not more, that leaves only one path forward. They have to get their own people to start spending money.
Okay, simple enough, right? Just get people to spend. Well, no, because that leads to a whole new kind of problem, one you can't solve with concrete and steel. This is a crisis of confidence. To have a consumption-based economy, you need consumers who feel safe and secure enough to open their wallets. And right now, in China, they just don't. And the scale of this confidence problem is staggering. Just look at this. Chinese consumers spend only about 38% of their country's GDP. Compare that to Europe, where it's over 50%, or the US, where it's nearly 70%. That is a massive, massive gap they have to close.
The real danger here is that China is getting stuck in this vicious, deflationary feedback loop. It works like this. People are nervous about the future, so they save their money instead of spending it. To get them to buy anything, companies have to cut their prices. But lower prices mean lower profits, which leads to layoffs and pay cuts. And what happens when people get laid off? They get even more nervous, and they save even more money, and the cycle just keeps going.
So, what have we seen? A broken investment model and a deep crisis of consumer confidence. But both of those are really just symptoms of a much deeper, more fundamental problem. The one problem that China absolutely cannot build its way out of. What's at the very heart of all this? Demographics. You see, for decades, that build it and they will come model worked because a constantly growing population would always be there to fill the ghost cities and use the new airports. That guarantee is now gone. As of last year, China's population is shrinking. Its birth rate has collapsed to just 1.09 children per woman. That is one of the lowest rates on planet Earth. Think about that. By 2030, its workforce is on track to shrink by about 1% every single year.
Now, let's be really clear here. China is not about to collapse. Its economy is still enormous, and its middle class is 700 million people strong. But that 4-decade period of unbelievable lightning-in-a-bottle growth, the expansion the World Bank called the fastest in history, that era is over.
So this isn't a story about a collapse. It's about the end of a truly historic chapter. The old playbook doesn't work anymore, and the population is getting smaller. So maybe the real question isn't whether we've seen peak China. Maybe it's about what a slower, more normal China means for the rest of us. The era of supercharged growth is over. The big question is, what comes next?